Now in this video we're going to take a look at blending some elements, some textures really, by taking a wood texture and then a water drop texture and blending the two to make it look like the water was actually there when it was shot, instead of just a dry surface. So we don't always have the ability to get water to behave the way we want to when we shoot it. So we sometimes got to take a really good shot of water and then a really good shot of what we want to put it on and then be able to blend them together. And using some layer effects you can do that pretty easily and quickly. So I've got a wood texture here that I really like, but what I want to do is I want to add this water droplet effect to it. Now you might look at this water drop texture and think, well, it's on a bright blue background, it's really not the color, it's not going to work. Don't concern yourself with the color, especially when you're searching out textures like this. Because I really like the way the light was hitting the water drops and everything like that, and I wasn't worried about the color because we're in Photoshop. We can control the color aspect of it. So let's go ahead and take the color information away. I'm going to go ahead and use my gradient map method by pressing D to set the default colors and then just go to the images menu to adjustments and then just choose gradient map. And it goes ahead and gets rid of that color information. So we're on a gray background. We've got the water droplets defined. Everything looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and just drag and drop it over to our working wood background here. So I'm going to press Command T and then Command 0 to scale the object. It's going to reveal the control handles there. Let's scale this in a little bit so it just fits. And there we go. All right. So the water droplets are on their own layer above the wood texture here. Now we're going to use this with a blend mode. Now, after some experimentation, I discovered that overlay was the best blend mode for this particular effect. But if you don't know and you're trying it on a different texture, then just make sure that your move tool is selected and just simply hold down the shift key and hit the plus sign to toggle through the various blend modes. And you can see how it's immediately going to blend with those different elements. Like I said, overlay is the one I like the best, but it does need some adjusting. So just overlay on its own does okay, but let's adjust it a little bit to make it a little bit more contrasting to the background. So I'm going to bring up levels while I've got the water layer selected, and let's go ahead and boost up the shadow element here and contrast highlight, but it's the mid-tone slider that really makes a difference here. If I push it to the right a little bit, you'll see that the drops get really much more defined on there, and that's really what we're looking for, so something light about that. So now looks pretty good. The texture, the water droplets are blending with the wood in a way that makes it look like they're actually there. However, there is one element here. If you notice, it's blending right. However, there should be a certain amount of distortion of the wood texture through the water droplets. Because right now we're just seeing it straight through there and there's straight lines and everything like that. Now, for the most part, we might be able to get away with this just as it is, and that's fine. But I want to make sure it's as real as possible. So we're going to do a little bit of a displacement on this to make it look like that water is in fact distorting the texture beneath it. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of this image. So go down to the image menu, go down here and choose duplicate. Click OK. And we're going to turn off the background layer and then turn off or put this texture layer back in normal blend mode there. And let's go ahead and flatten the document. So it's just the water texture and nothing else. All right, now I'm going to go into filter menu and go down here and choose blur and choose Gaussian blur. We're going to give us a little bit of a smoothing over with some blurring. So I'm just going to do about a 2 pixel blur on there. I think it'll look pretty good. And then go ahead and click OK, and then we're going to do a save as. You do not want to change the size of the document. We're going to be applying this as a displacement map on the original document, so it needs to remain the same size, otherwise the displacement isn't going to look right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and just call it displacement, and we'll save it as a PSD to the desktop so I can get to it really quickly and easily. And there we go. Now, back on our original image. I'm going to select the background wood texture, and I'm going to go ahead and do this to a duplicate layer. In the event something goes wrong or I don't like it, I can just simply throw that layer away and get back to the original. Now, there are 2 ways you can apply the displacement here. I'm going to show you both of them. Now, the first one is obviously called a displacement map, and the other one is using the glass filter in Photoshop. Both have interesting results. It's really a matter of preference. So let's go ahead and select, we've got the duplicate wood layer selected, so we're going to go under the filter menu and go down here to distort and choose displace. Now here I'm going to go ahead and set the horizontal and vertical scale to 10 and then leave the settings here as they are. We'll go ahead and click OK, and then you're going to be prompted to locate that displacement map we just created, which is right here on the desktop. So go ahead and select that and click open. And then there you can see what it's done. Now I'm going to undo it. I'm zoomed in here and I'm going to undo it. Notice what happens. the texture is bending right around those various elements there of the water droplets. So that's giving me a much more realistic distortion of that water element on the text there. So that's looking pretty good. Now if it seems too much, it's just a matter of going back in there to that distort or that displace setting and then just lowering the numbers a bit. So I'm just going to make them 5 this time. We'll use that same displacement map, and then the distortion is a little bit less pronounced there, but it's still there, making it much more realistic. So that's using displacement. The other method, of course, I mentioned was glass. Now I'm back to the original state of the wood texture, and I'm going to go to the filter menu again, and this time go to distort, and glass is located right under displace. Now here I'm going to go ahead to the texture section and then click on this little menu here and choose load texture. We'll locate that displaced file. And you'll notice we want to make sure we keep the scaling at 100% because we are in the same size document we were before. And you'll notice the amount of distortion we're getting on the object here. If I go ahead and turn off the preview here on and off, you can see the distortion on the object. I've got the distortion at a pretty low number, around 3, and the smoothness at around 7. So if I go ahead and click OK, you'll see that it gives me a very similar distortion to that of the displacement map. Slightly different in the way it behaves, but it gives you 2 different options when you're doing that. I actually like the glass version a little bit better, and that gives me a much more realistic distortion on that element there. So just to give this a little more finished look, I'm going to add a text element here, and we'll just go ahead and add H2O to this. I'm going to go ahead and center this. And let's go ahead and fill that text with white. So I'm just going to Command Delete so it fills the background layer. Now I want it to look like the actual element H2O, so I'm going to select just the 2 there, and let's make that a little bit smaller, of course. And let's just drop it beneath the base, or a little bit lower than the baseline there, so it looks a little bit more accurate. And adjust the kerning in here a little bit on the spacing. And again, we'll go ahead and recenter it in the object there. And I'm going to go ahead and blend it with the texture using an overlay blend mode here. Now, where the text blends with the texture, it's obviously a little crowded with the water droplets and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer mask to the water layer, and then just get a little bit of a gradient fade here. I'm just going to use my foreground to transparent radial gradient, and just add a couple of gradients right here by the text. Not too much. I want someone to have a little bit of elements of the drops in there, but it's allowing that H2O lettering to be a little bit more legible in there. But that is how you blend a couple of different elements in Photoshop. Especially when it comes to water elements, you want to really make it look like it's really blending with the texture it's sitting on, and that displacement feature is the key there. It's one thing to blend it and make it look like it's there with the lighting and the blend mode and everything like that, but it's that displacement that really is key. And remember, you have 2 choices when it comes to that, the displacement map and the glass filter. Try them both and see which one gives you the best result.